Okay, good day, class. So, welcome to our first lecture for the final term. So, we're looking into the presentation of the colonial urban planning and land structures in the Philippines from 1521 to 1828. So, this is a paper by Pilar Chias and Tomas Abad from the Department of Architecture of Alcala, Madrid. So, this lecture was prepared by architect Tom Israel Carumba. So, for an introduction, so everything started during the uh, 1521 exploration of Magellan and Elcano. So found the islands of Samar, Leyte, Cebu, Mactan, and the north coast of Mindanao. So here in northern Mindanao, you have Cagayan de Oro. So probably the access the cathedral through the to our large river there. Then 1565, Lopez de Legazpi founded San Miguel, which is Cebu's east coast, then followed by about 200 presidios or fortresses. Then in 1571, they founded Manila over an existing native commercial settlement. So Spanish colonial period mainly studied in terms of historical and architectural view, but urban planning and land structure is usually forgotten or scarcely mentioned. So I think you could relate to this because we've been studying the Spanish colonial period since in elementary. Sometimes we look into the historical context and the architectural context, but the urban planning and the land structures, it's usually not discussed, or if even mentioned, it is just limited or scarce. So the study methodology, we have the sources. So it's based on unpublished ancient cartography from Spanish archives and repositories. So design and construction of digital cartographic databases of Spanish ancient cartography from the internet. Then you also have a comparative analysis of different maps and images. Then conclusions can be directly drawn to explain current situation of the defined urban and territorial structures. So let's look into the definition and classification of the main urban types. So we have three. So the oldest colonial settlements are the isolated forts and villages, which are surrounded by Muslim territories and located at coast. So if you look at this context, guys, um, these are forts and villages primarily to protect themselves from the local population that they have not yet conquered. So our Muslim brothers were really strong to resist these colonial powers in the past. That's why they resorted to building isolated forts to protect themselves. So they followed the design according to Leyes de Indias or the Indies legislation enacted by King Philip II in 1573. So this is the main layout that's followed in most of in the colonies that were conquered by Spain. Then the repercussions of these laws on the new Philippine foundations had not been studied. So let's look into the definition and classification of the main urban types, the Leyes de India, summary and key points. So define the most appropriate place to develop main activities in safe harbors, inlets, bays and riverbanks, as headlands to control the territories of the farming settlements and fertile plains. Then consider easiest terrestrial and maritime connections to other settlements. So just here in Cagayan de Oro, you could observe that our church, the San Agustin Church, is near the river. Probably in the past, maybe it's easier to access that if they use a boat, or it could be deeper in the past. That's why they chose that location. And if you also look at some of the cities that were developed by Spain, it's actually near riverbanks, harbors, or inlets. Then also they choose the most healthy places. Then they apply regular grid as a suitable way to define the new urban structures. So if you could observe, for example, our cathedral in the past, usually where the cathedral is, you could see an open plaza, and it would be surrounded by the government centers, and the houses of those who are affluent in the area. Then the cities should have at least 10 residents, which are preferably farmers and cattle raisers. So this is so that um, they could be self-sufficient and have their own food uh, also. So that's why it's most favorable in the past that you have farmers who are also residents. Then building and public space design should be admired by the natives as urban design and architecture played an essential role in the political propaganda and image of the Spanish Empire. So if you look at past church in the context of the past, so imagine yourselves you see a grand cathedral, a very beautiful church. So it projects the power of the Spanish Empire. And then on the front of that, you have a very nice uh, government center, and it's surrounded by the affluent houses, and then there's a plaza in front. So it projects stability. Okay, so that's why they use the grid pattern. Then also, it's also to prevent damage to native settlements and their rights. So that's why forts were developed in order to protect settlements from attacks by native populations that have not yet been conquered by Spain. So these are the classification of main urban types we grouped in according to function. So we have port cities. An example is Manila and Cavite. Then you also have military port cities such as Jolo, Zamboanga, Iligan, and Tandag. Then secondary port and anchorages, for example, is Sorsogon, Cebu, and Samar. And you have forts on headlands, which is Polok, Mindanao, and as Isabela in Basilan Island. Then you have inner plats and cities, consolidate the terrestrial routes and defenses, as well as some strategic exploitations. We have Amadeo in Mindanao, Vigan, Balabac, and settlements in Cagayan Valley. Then we have also cities at the riversides, at Cotabato, which is the Rio Grande de Mindanao. So it would be nice if we could also add here um, our city in Cagayan de Oro, because the cathedral is near also the riverside. So there's a lot, and also according to urban type for the definition and classification of the main urban types. So we also have the regular grid, the distorted grid, the linear. Then you also have irregularly shaped, which is Manila's old suburbs before the Spanish settlement. Then we have ideal planned towns. So no example of purely ideal urban structures in radial or star shape. Nearest sample is Intramuros and Batangas. So I hope that you still remember, guys, why there are star shape fortifications. So why military architecture um, that design emerged. I think this was discussed already in history of architecture, so I hope that you could remember it. So this is the linear city of Marilao in Luzon. So the medieval transition of the itinerary cities, the urban plan of Santo Domingo de la Calzada, Logroño, Spain in the 18th century, just a total length of 650 meters at both sides of the main street. So there are four sets of rectangular blocks, each one 70 meters long and 35 meters in depth, with backlots. In the town center, there was a wide main square, the Plaza Mayor, the heart of the social and commercial life. So the source is written here. So we have main historical land structures. So we have the first Spanish settlements. So they are isolated and spread over the archipelago, strategically located on headlands and serve both commercial and defensive purposes. So it's highlighted here defensive because since they are invaders and foreign colonizers, so could expect that there are also resistance from the natives. Then there's the first Spanish harbors, which is founded at casual anchorages. So the establishments are in Sorsogon, Cebu, Palapag in Samar, Leyte, Mactan, Tandag, Iligan, and Pangil. And you also have the East Indies trade from the Manila to Acapulco. So there's a trade. I think this is a galleon trade, Manila, Acapulco. You have Mexico, Veracruz, then Spain via Havana Harbor. So we already have a rich trade with Mexico during that period. But before the Spanish came, class, we also have trade with our Chinese brothers in China. So port cities, it conformed to a strategic network where each piece was designed to play a specific role in the Spanish strategy of sea power. Site responds to suitability. Situation refers to location in relation to commercial and other maritime interests. So look at here. This is figure 14 by W. Heater. So this is a new chart of the Sulu archipelago showing all the islands and passages from the islands of Borneo, Palawan, and Mindanao. Okay. Look at here. And Maguindanao. It's 1820. This is from the Instituto de Historia y Cultura Militar in Madrid, Spain. This is the map. This is also a Juan Luis de Acosta Plano del Valle de Cagayan, 1720. So this is a plan here. So we also have main historical land structures. So these are founded on main natural harbors linked to main maritime trading, but hardly any inland connection. So we have the Mindanao and Holo Highlands. So inland connection is hard, and travel between merchants could not be protected if they're going to travel via land, because of course the colonizers has a lot of resistance from the natives who does not want to be conquered, especially in Mindanao and Hulu Island. So they have to resort to maritime trade, so or routes by the sea. Then we have older towns along main land routes. So it depended on distances between staging posts, topography, and the understanding of natural risk. Then we have agricultural inland towns. The importance grew as the military control of the territories became an essential aim to safeguard Spanish interests in the population against foreign attacks in Tarlac, Bangbang, and Ibong. Then we have old trade routes, becoming itineraries that facilitated military maneuvers. Manila Tarlac and Lapu Bangi in Quezon, Luzon, and Kalamutang Leyere in Samar Island. So let's go into the next slide. So we also have the 1890s Manila Dagupan Railroad. So it connected Manila with the main inner market of sugarcane-rich province of Pangasinan. So if you think about it, guys, so if you have a railroad, it's easier to transport goods. So I think it's that's this is one of the main problems of modern Philippine society, because we already have limited railroad tracks. So if only we could connect our farms in the hinterlands via rail, it would be easier for our farmers to transport their goods to the cities. So it would spice up trade, create a lot of job opportunities also. Then we have harbors and cities. So gradually linked through a dense network of roads and navigable rivers and canals, supply lines were assured through terrestrial connections with the main agricultural areas, Batangas and Laguna, and through maritime trade lines with the main cattle raising area on the Visayas Islands. Then we have Manila and Cavite ports. The stones for breakwaters and jetties were transported by barges by the Pasig River from the Bay Lagoon wood via Ilocos Cavite route. You have also the port cities, which are enlarged and improved through the construction of new entrepots, breakwaters, piers, or dry docks. So there's a lot of uh, docks constructed all over the country. I think I saw an old dock there in Balingasag a while back. I'm not so sure if it was during the Spanish era or during the American era, but it was really old. But since Balingasag has a lot of old houses in the Spanish era, maybe it was during that time, during the Spaniards, it was constructed. And you have here figure 13, from Fernando Brambilla, the view of the Sorsogon Anchorage. So I think this was a hand sketch. It's really nice. You could see that our country is really beautiful if we only learn how to take care of our natural resources. This is also the Plano de la Isla de Samal. Uh, okay, it's nice also. So in conclusion, Spain has two ways of controlling the territories. One is through the foundation of sites. Okay? When they founded Manila, Cebu, Cagayan de Oro, and the creation of road network related to them. But of course, not all the time they could link everything through a round route. You have to make sure that the route is well protected. And you also have a main urban type, more or less a less distorted grid, is sometimes surrounded by a defense wall, excuse me, irregularly shaped land, and even ideal plans. Then they take advantage of geographical and climatic conditions, as well as reduce the risk of earthquake damage. Streets arranged according to prevailing winds, width equal to the height of the building to avoid direct solar rays. Main squares as meeting points, which is the heart of the town. The fluency of urban spaces was also guaranteed through the structure of main and secondary streets and the subtle relationship established with a system of backlots and outer plots. So, of course, Spain would always build their settlements in uh, advantageous geographical locations, such as locations which are not very prone to earthquakes, landslides, and also locations that are advantageous to them in terms of um, military considerations. Okay. And especially the location should be an area where they could easily supply their forts also or cities. So next slide. So there's another picture of the San Francisco Square in Manila in 1789. So this is a very nice drawing of what the past was in the Philippines. And this is the Plaza de Manila in 1783. Sketch also. So I think it's discussed here. It's already about the Corregidor Island. So this is the coat of arms of the city. Okay. So it yeah it looks really European. Uh, so I wonder, guys, if our cities were not damaged in World War II, if we could have been the Paris of Asia. So sayang talaga. So this is the view of Ma- the bay in the city of Manila. Okay, it's really nice. This is the capital of Manila in 1818. So this is the view of the city of Manila from Bagong Bayan. So this is still a walled city here. And then, but basically, um, people could outside the walls they could farm, they could work. This is where the merchants travel. The last slide is the Pasig River in the city of Manila in 1789 to 1794. So the drawing is really old, but I could tell that we really had beautiful cities in the past. Sayang lang that it was damaged during World War II. Okay, so this would be our first short lecture for the final term. So if you have any further questions or clarifications, guys, you can reach me anytime to our group chat. So see you next meeting and amping mutaran. God bless.